Welcome back to my channel. This will be part 2 of the E46 M3 build. In the previous episode, I had worked on sorting out the suspension, and today we're going to be focusing on the engine. Specifically, what we're going to be doing is fixing a few oil leaks on the car and also doing basic maintenance items. This will be to make the car run as efficiently as possible, and this is ultimately to support this guy right here going completely away, because we're going to be replacing it with the CSL airbox. But before we do that, we want to make sure the car is absolute tip-top shape. So to accomplish that, I've got a lot of the basic maintenance items here. I just want to make sure the car is running as efficiently as possible. I would hate to put the CSL box on and something's not 100%. So I've got new coils, new plugs, new O2 sensors, as well as a fuel filter and some gaskets to hopefully prevent some oil leaks that we're seeing. Specifically, we noticed the valve cover leaking, so we're going to do the valve cover gasket. We're going to inspect the Vanos while we're in there, and we're also going to do the CPV valve because it's leaking pretty terribly. Technically, I didn't need the whole valve. I really just needed the O-ring, but with the mileage on this car, I just went ahead and ordered the whole piece. There's a part number if you're curious. So it's a little hard to see, but that's where the CPV valve is located in the car. It's right next to the back of the block, and when you can see how much oil has been running down here. A lot of times when looking underneath the car, this will look like a rear main leak, but in reality, it's just this thing leaking. So I haven't moved the camera at all, and this is the angle that I was looking. It's right through here. So to get to it, you'll need to make an extension setup like this. Then you can reach through there and disconnect it. All right, well, that was a near disaster. You can see I stripped it just a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out the rest of the way with a screwdriver. Ended up having to change my extension. What ended up working was using a wobble extension and taping it so it wouldn't flop around too much. It gave me just the perfect amount of length to get in there. So now that it's broken free, there's no reason to still use that. Just gonna use a normal screwdriver and it'll come right out. Almost there. Not the easiest thing to do to try to film this, but I wanted you to be able to see it. New one going in. After we get this started, we'll just torque it down, which we won't be able to actually get a torque wrench on it. We'll just make it nice and snug. And hopefully this will stop our main oil leak. Okay, the new part is now in there. One thing that's interesting to notice is a little bit of oil ran out while I was working on it, and look where it all ended up. So if you think you have a rear main seal leak, check this guy first. And if you're ever doing headers on the car, replace it because it'll be much easier than trying to reach around the manifolds. Also worth mentioning, to give myself a little bit more room, I disconnected this probe. So I'll just put it back now and we'll be able to move on to the next part. Actually, I take that back. I'm gonna leave this loose for now because I've got perfect access to the oxygen sensors. So I'm gonna use a crow's foot socket, get in here and disconnect it. And the other one is somewhere over here, right up there if you can see it. Gonna go ahead and swap both of these out. That way we'll get good readings to the ECU, which will help us maximize the effects of the airbox. Well, that wasn't very fun, but we were able to get both of them broken loose. Ended up using the crow's foot on the one up here and used a long bar with some leverage on it. This one I was able to just break free with a 22 millimeter. If anyone tells you this is easy, it's really not. It's all finding the right angle and making sure it breaks free without stripping it out. So if you're doing this on yours, good luck. But seriously though, it's doable. Just take your time and be careful. I forgot to mention, when I was working on the car previously, I was soaking these in PB Blaster for about the past week, so it made them break free, fairly easy. Next step is gonna be to remove these one at a time and go up top and switch them out. Don't recommend taking both out because there's a chance you could get them confused, and why do that if you don't have to? To switch these out, we're gonna have to remove this beauty cover. This is super simple. You just remove all the exposed chrome bolts, drops right off, and then we'll have access to where we need to change out the O2s. Next up, the breather valve. You just squeeze on the tabs and pull up. Then you'll remove this. And if you heard a pop, That's because I broke it. That's okay though, when we do the CSL box, we have to actually extend this. So I guess I skipped ahead a few steps by a happy accident. Coils on this car actually look like they may have been changed. Looks like they has Delphi units. When we get to that portion, we'll go ahead and pull them off and see what they look like and see if they have any date codes on them. So this is where the O2 sensors are fished through. It looks like I picked the top one here. This is why you want to do them one at a time, because it can get very confusing which one you're working on. So yeah, one at a time. Take your time and put everything back exactly as it was, and you'll be good to go. Here's the part numbers that you'll need. You can see they're different. That's because they're different lengths, but they're also color coded. So the one I removed is yellow, so we'll go back with the same one. You can see it looks like these have been used for a good while, so it's a good thing we're changing these. So when you go to reinstall, just try to follow the exact path that it came out. Might be a little difficult, but you should be able to tuck it all in. Okay, job is done. I'd like to say I enjoyed that, but I absolutely did not. But it was necessary because I want the car to run right. Since everything's already taken apart, we're going to work on tackling the valve cover gasket next. Normally you'd have to do a little bit of disassembly to get to this point, but we've already done it all, so why not do this while we're in here? Not to mention we're leaking at the back. So you're gonna take apart some connections. Basically, you're gonna take everything off of the top of the cover here. And once we pull the valve cover off, we're gonna look at the Vanos unit to see if we have any broken tabs and if it has indeed been fixed. Went ahead and marked this with tape just so I don't get these confused, because I am gonna have to disconnect them again. All of these are coming out super easy, which makes me think they've been recently replaced. Other than that, we've got two 8mm here, one right here and one right here. And we'll be able to move this whole thing off of the valve cover. Right, there's the 13. So this should move off freely now. Yep. So we'll move all this out of the way, and we'll be one step closer to taking off all these bolts and pulling it off. Okay, first one came off easy, but the others are gonna fight me a little bit. So I use a screwdriver and pop them off. Sometimes you just need a little leverage. Or in this case, a handle to actually pull with. We'll get the rest of them off here and we'll start undoing, I believe these are 10s, quite a few of them, and then we'll be able to lift this right off. Taking these off one by one, just gonna lay them down on a towel in order. I think they're all gonna be the same except for the front three. But if we can keep them in order, it might be best. The rubber looks a little crusty on all of them, so I think this is a good thing to do. Everything looks pretty good in here. There's a little bit of varnish, but that's okay. Looks like the bolts have all been marked with some type of, it looks like a Sharpie, so I think someone's been in here for sure. I don't recall seeing that writing on my previous one either. Both tabs are intact, so that is great news. So we're gonna go ahead and swap the valve cover off. The valve cover gasket, and put this back together before anything can fall in. New gasket is on, as well as the spark plug tube gaskets. Everything is much more pliable. The old one wasn't completely perished, but it was feeling a little bit like plastic. So we'll go ahead and get the valve cover back on and close this guy back up. Next step is just reassembling everything. So you're taking your new little grommets here. And then putting them back in place where they came from. Just like that, our valve cover gasket is done. Can't say how happy I am to not see a broken tab. Last time I did this job on an E46 M3, I was greeted with this. So yeah, ended up spending about $1,000 on that car to redo everything. It was worth it in the end to bulletproof it and put the new hub in, but I got really lucky that it didn't fall down into the engine and, you know, wreak havoc. So next up, we'll do the spark plugs, put the new coil packs on, and we'll be almost done. Just doing the stock plugs. Ended up with 8 of them. It was, for whatever reason, cheaper to buy 2 sets of 4 than it was to buy 6 individually. I'd say definitely time to replace these. Good call on those. I think I paid about 70 or 80 bucks for all the plugs. We'll have 2 extra, so not a bad expense to make sure that everything's running right. Here's the new one. Also worth noting that the previous plug wasn't the right one for the car. So it'll be back to how it should be from the factory. Here's a view of the old plugs. Don't look terrible, but don't look great either. Overall, glad I did this. Got 2 extras, of course, which will be perfect for when I do the plugs on my S54 Touring. Only have to order 1 more box. And finally, new coils. These are OE Eldors. For some reason, they come in these boxes. I think it's because they don't sell direct. But let's install these. Simply click them on and lock them into place. The only real trick is to line up this portion with the indents that you see right there. All 6 plugs and coils are installed. I went ahead and saved the old ones and put them in these boxes. They looked pretty fresh. They were Bosch units, so they're perfectly fine. This is another situation where you probably should look at stuff before you just blindly order parts. But it's okay. We'll keep those on hand. You never know when you'll need them. So now we'll just put the beauty cover back on and we'll be completely done here. At least for now. Normally you would put the entire car back together, but have a little bit more work to do. Beauty cover is now back in place. Went ahead and hit it with some all-purpose cleaner before putting it back on here, because this part is very hard to get to once the cowling's installed again. Still need to fix this. I'll be doing that in the next episode when I will be doing the airbox as well. So I think I'm gonna call it a day for now, clean up my garage a little bit and get some rest. As always, I appreciate you watching very much.